A London forex trader called Paul was jailed for 10 years. He was a skinny 5'9" guy who stole millions from his clients, his own family and also his friends. Paul ran a forex Ponzi scheme which conned people into thinking he was actually a real forex trader, but in reality he was just a fraudster. He took investors' money and told them he would trade their money in the financial markets to make more money in exchange for 15% of the profits. He also told them he would get them a nice return of 70% or more every year, but instead of investing their money, Paul spent the money on expensive shopping sprees in Mayfair and Knightsbridge, buying all the latest designer clothes. He also loved to travel around the world, going on expensive holidays, and would only travel by private jet. Paul also spent loads of money on supercars and fancy luxury restaurants in Mayfair. Paul even stole money from his own mother. He got his own mother to invest $500,000 into the scheme only for her to lose everything. Paul's parents worked for over 50 years before they retired, but shortly after their retirement Paul's father passed. The last thing his mother thought was her own son would rip her off. All the money his parents worked for was meant to be for their retirement, but since Paul's father passed, his mother had to manage the money all on her own. His mother was not the best at managing money because she had always just been a housewife, and his dad looked after everything because Paul's parents were very traditional people. His dad took care of the finances in the family and his mother cooked and cleaned, and they were happily married. When Paul's father passed, his mother lost the leader of the family since Paul's father was the logical parent. Paul's father would never have given Paul any money because he always saw through Paul. He always saw Paul for who he really was and not who Paul wanted people to believe he was. The last person Paul's mother thought would scam her would be her own son. In court, the judge asked Paul how could he steal money from his own mother, and he replied saying he was going to inherit all of his mother's money after his mother had passed anyway, so he believed he might as well just spend all the money now because he thought he was entitled to it. Paul told the judge his mother had too much money in her bank account and she wasn't doing anything with it, so it was better that he just spent all the money right now, because in life you only live once, so it's best to spend everything you have on experiences and create memories that will last a lifetime. Paul's mother came to court and was mortified by what she heard. She heard everything. She was in tears after hearing this from her own son. Paul left his own mother with nothing and in court showed no remorse for his actions. During Paul's first couple of weeks in prison, he spent most of the time in his cell after a big black guy tried to bust his cheeks in the showers, but luckily Paul managed to narrowly escape without getting his cheeks clapped out. A week later, another inmate on the wing hit him over the head with a pool stick after watching the news. The inmate couldn't believe Paul scammed his own mother out of $500,000, so he wanted to teach Paul a lesson. To avoid more problems, Paul decided to lay low and just keep away from the other inmates. Before going to prison, Paul always heard stories about white boys getting turned out when they went to prison. After Paul narrowly escaped getting his cheeks busted by a big black guy on his wing, he didn't want that type of encounter to happen again, so he pretty much just kept himself to himself and didn't interact with other inmates at all. The next day a white prison officer who was 6 foot tall came to Paul's cell to tell him that he was taking him off the wing to get a compulsory medical checkup. Paul told the guard he already did the checkup last week and he doesn't want to do it again, so this was a mistake. The guard told Paul this was no mistake and Paul had to do the medical. The prison officer advised Paul he already checked with the medical team, who clarified Paul didn't do the medical last week. Paul asked the guard, "How could you have checked this with the medical unit so quickly when I only just told you right now that I already did the medical last week?" The prison officer started to get angry because Paul wasn't following his orders, so he responded saying, "You either come with me now or I'll drag you to the medical unit myself." Paul looked at the officer's angry face and didn't seem like he had much of a choice, so Paul just put on his clothes and went with the officer to do the medical again so he could just get it over and done with. Once Paul was ready, the guard handcuffed him and they set off on their journey. All prisoners that leave the wing needed to be handcuffed, so this was just standard procedure. While on their journey to the medical center, Paul thought it was really odd that he was the only one on his wing going to do the medical, but once he got off the wing and started walking through the prison grounds with the officer, he felt the nice breeze on his face while looking at the trees and really liked it.